And yeah, thank you guys for coming very much. My name is Mike Brightman. My company is Brightman Designs, and like Brad said, we're teamed up and we work a lot with Lumion, and we do that because we use it every day and we see how much value it brings to the work that we do. So we offer 3D modeling, rendering, visualization services. And so what me and Linda have been doing is traveling around California and interviewing some of these larger architecture firms and asking them about their experiences with Lumion and really taking in how it's changed the way that they work. And so what I found about the way it changed our company is that rendering was tough. It was like you had to you build the model first and then you put it into a photorealistic rendering program. You set up your textures, your lighting, all of the challenges of a night render, and not to mention like an animation or like a really large, expansive site. So there's some really tough things about creating photorealistic visualizations, and Lumion has really just kind of leveled the playing field and made it very accessible for anyone to create beautiful photorealistic images and animations. So if you can build a 3D model, you can put it into Lumion. And it's very simple to run and create those animations. Easy to use, render times are like non-existent. So what I want to do though is show you how we produce these models. So my specialty is in SketchUp, and so over the past like 12 years, I've really refined this process in SketchUp. And so we've come up with basically 3 different model types. And recently we put out a blog post about these 3 different model types. And there's some printouts here, so if you want to grab one before you cruise out for the evening, there's a print, and then there's also some resources at the end. So,
they're right by you.
Yes, printouts right there. If you maybe pass them around, that's all good. So, so anyway, there's 3 different model types that I identified that we're really working on here. So this graphic really shows our entire process, and this works really well for me. It's SketchUp, I'm extremely fast at it. Layout, I know it really well. And if you don't love SketchUp and you don't love layout, that doesn't mean that this isn't going to work for you. We're just talking about building the geometry in Rhino, Revit, CAD, whatever it is you're using, moving it into Lumion, and just coming up with a really efficient workflow. That's what we're talking about here. So the 3 model types. Well, let me start from the beginning. SketchUp is a 3D modeling program. I like the fact that it's a surface modeler. So it's not like there's a wall tool or a window tool or a roof tool. You just kind of like play with these rules in SketchUp, and you can build anything. You can create your own layering systems, and that's what we've done. That's why I really latched on to SketchUp. Layout is if you're familiar with like 2D CAD, layout is the paper space for SketchUp. So layout is where you take your 3D model and flatten it and put it on a page and then set it to an architectural scale. So these models, as they march along and evolve, they go into layout to create design packets and construction documents. And at the same time, those exact same models head down into Lumion, where we set up animations, virtual tours, and still renderings. And then those guys go back up into layout and create your design packets. So, for the sake of being flexible on any workflow, this could be Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, or whatever page layout, page creation software you're using, and really any rendering software as well. But it's just Lumion really fits and is extremely fast for our needs. So, the 3 different model types: photo textured, render ready, and condoc. So photo textured model is kind of a loose, quick and dirty model. You take a picture of a building and you import the Google Earth imagery, and you're able to generate a 3D mass off of that photograph and that aerial imagery. So it's not super accurate. You don't go out there and measure the building, but you're able to generate this mass, and it's really excellent for context buildings in a visualization or shadow studies and things like that. Then you can progress a photo textured model into a render ready model. And so what we do is we'll like trace the details. So if a photo textured model has the details represented with a photograph, then we start actually tracing the photograph and pushing and pulling faces and creating 3D geometry. And then a condoc model is something totally different. That's using our layering system. We build these models inside and out. We have a default template that we provide and an entire system for using SketchUp to just make it really plug and play, and just a layering system that as architects and designers you can just use and just hop on board without really having to think too hard about it and invent it yourself. So what I was going to do tonight then is take a look at each one of these models, and then we're going to pull it into Lumion and show you how we can create a presentation. So the first model type is, let's close this, is a render ready model, or I'm sorry, a photo texture model. So what you would typically do is go out to a site and walk around and take pictures. So I just kind of picked this building out here. This is in my neighborhood in Denver. And so it's this old gas station auto repair, and you know, the big trend now is to, you know, gut these things and turn them into a restaurant or a brew pub or whatever. So I thought maybe I'd just use this project to evolve out of that. So here's a good photograph for creating a photo textured model. It's good to catch every single view all the way around, and more pictures is better because inevitably late night you're going to wish you had taken an extra one. So in SketchUp, what I'll do is geolocate the site. So I click on File, Geolocation, Add Location. And then this brings up this Maps interface, and I can type in, we'll just do York and Bruce Randolph, comma Denver. All right, so then this, with the Maps interface, we can just kind of scroll around and find that. Oh, wrong way. Here's Bruce Randolph, and here's our building. Okay, so once we're located, we click on Select Region, and then we can scoot the pins around and grab as much context as we want. And so I'll make sure to include these buildings over here and click on Grab. All right, so when I do that, this is going to import a one-to-one real-world scale aerial image of this site. It does pull in the Google Earth terrain as well, but for this site it's pretty flat, so that's not too impressive. Then what I do is oftentimes I go to like my, we'll go to model info, maybe on units, we might enable length snapping to make a nice clean model. So maybe I'll snap it to 6 inches, and then I can use my rectangle tool and start tracing things out. Like that. And then I'll just pull these up, and I often exaggerate, and you know what, this one, I'm just gonna go like that. So I often exaggerate the building mass or the building height, because what's accurate here is the building footprint. I know that those, the X and the Y, those are correct coming out of Google Earth, so I've got accurate measurements there. So now what I can do is set up my camera view kind of similar to where I was in that first photograph, and go to Camera, Match New Photo. And then I'll just navigate to where I'm holding these photos, presentations, and we're gonna go with, this one looks pretty good, so we'll say open. And you know what, I skipped a step there. So I need to drop my axes down here at the front bottom corner, Camera, Match New Photo, and then let's drop this in there. Okay. So now we've got this kind of ugly grid happening across the way. We've got our photograph superimposed with our model. So it makes it a lot easier if we just turn off the model for the time being. And then you can just focus on this idea of, like back in studio, when you take a picture and blow it up on a copy machine and tape it to your desk. So essentially this picture, this image is taped to our digital desk, and then use your T-square to project your vanishing points. So these axes bars are the T-squares to project out, and then you know you would use those vanishing points to produce more lines. Well, we're going to use those vanishing points to create accurate geometry. So I'll align all of these axes bars with parallel elements on the building. I want to set my origin at that front bottom corner where I had mentioned in the beginning there, and like that. And then we'll drop this down here. And you know, maybe I'll use like this window since I can't really see what's going on beyond, like that. Okay, so now I turn my model back on, and you can see that, you know, we're pretty close actually. I just kind of got lucky on that one. But typically what you do is kind of zoom your model until the vertical edges fit what we pulled up. So like, again, the height is not what's accurate. So we're not matching this, we're matching these extents here. So I'll click on done. And now we've got our match photo scene. So what I can do is orbit into 3D, use my push-pull tool. I click once there and go back to that match photo scene, and I can set a very accurate height. I'll do the same thing for this one. Click there, and then set that match photo, set that building height based on that match photo. So once we've got to this point, we can click on project textures from photo, and then it throws that photograph onto that building mass. Cool? So that's a photo textured model. That's a quick and dirty one. And if you just needed a quick study on this building, in 15 minutes you can have some sort of drawings knocked out. And so that's a pretty helpful thing when you're just doing some building studies. Now, if we wanted to evolve this one, so typically what we would do, maybe I'd just throw the imagery on the roof, and you could work your way around and add more match photos. But for this exercise, maybe I'll just go to File, Open, and let me grab a model that's already complete. So we'll go to our presentations again. And here's our photo textured existing. Okay, so we'll go back to our design tab. So you can see this one, I kind of worked all the way around it and used some of the native features in SketchUp to just create a little bit more of an accurate model just using these photo textures. So when we move a photo texture model into a render-ready model, that's where I start going in and actually tracing things. So I might use my rectangle tool and trace this opening here. And then you can push and pull things back and start to give it depth. So this way, that geometry is actually going to cast shadows. So that's kind of the idea here is maybe I'd say, I'll draw a rectangle around here, make this a component, we'll just call that our window, make a copy of it over here, and then there's all kinds of plugins, like we've got one called Windowizer. We can set this to be 4 rows, 4 columns, and we'll just make the frame width 1 inch, 1 inch, and our mullions at like 0.5 and 0.5. And let's just see what that comes up with. There we go. Cool. So a big thing with SketchUp is to really know these plugins and just know, not that you have to master all of them, you just got to know they exist so that when you're running these tasks that take time, you can find the right tools and then you can learn what you need to know. So, this is the beginnings of a render-ready model. So, we might go through and pick better brick, pick cleaner textures, and really evolve it into something that looks more like, let's go back here to our presentations. And we've got our render-ready model. So we'll open up our existing one, and I won't save those changes.
This is like the cooking show where now you pull the finish.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we pulled this one out of the oven and all set. So you can do this too. So, yeah. So that's how we build the render-ready model. We keep evolving that as existing conditions. And at this point, you've got line work. So it's, you could even go in here, align your view, go to a 2D drawing style, set it to parallel projection, and you could go to File, Export, 2D Graphic, and you could kick out DWGs. So if you're working in 2D CAD, it's very simple to take this model and take these techniques and then move it on to the next program. We don't force everyone into this one SketchUp layout Lumion. It's whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you're good at and the right tool for the job. So maybe 2D CAD is where you go and dimension this thing up and start sketching, or maybe you send it to layout and print it and then start drawing with trace. So that's typically a good place to start for design, right? Okay, so then let's see, where are we going with this? So then one other model type, just to clarify on all those, is a condoc model. And so we've got an example of that here. And a condoc model, before we move into Lumion, this is a great example of a Lumion rendering using a condoc model as well as photo textured models for context. So like this building in the foreground, this is built inside and out with a lot of detail, and it will run through condoc and create the design packet and construction documents. Whereas these guys were built in a very similar way to what I just showed you, and then we render it in Lumion and add the depth of field effect. And so that kind of blurs it out just a little bit in the background and keeps the focus on this building in the foreground. So you really want to think about these model types and their strengths and weaknesses and where they're best applied, because if you were to go and build all the background buildings as render-ready models, that's going to take a really long time. And it's just going to be a lot of work that doesn't need to be completed. Whereas you just stick a photo texture on that mass and you're good to go. So let's see. So let's open up that. This is our shortcut. We'll open, I think I already have that one open. Okay, so yeah, there's a good graphic for you. So you can see how this one has wall thicknesses, and these guys are on a layer called context. So with a condoc model, we give you, all of your preset layers, your template, and all the standards to work within, and then you're able to just have a plan for modeling in SketchUp. So yeah, the key takeaway though on 3D model types for designers is condoc model up front, because that's a high level of detail, and a photo textured model in the back. And so we're being smart about the amount of work that we're going to do to complete this project. Cool. Okay, so let's see. So let's talk about Lumion now. I want to jump back over here and look at a render-ready model proposed. So this model, this is kind of like the final design here. We went through, again, you can see we've got photo textured models. So these are really nice, simple, pretty sloppy, really. I mean, we just kind of throw them together in Photoshop, whatever textures we need. As long as it's there, it's going to look right. Same thing here, like these guys aren't real clean, but it's going to look correct in the background. And then over here, you can see that we evolved our design. We added detail, picked nice wood textures. And so now we've got a complete model that's ready to be rendered. Let me see if I've got some all on. Yeah, so we do set up all of our vegetation in SketchUp, just because sometimes we do need to just kick out like a quick elevation set or design set. But really, if you're going to Lumion, we always have this Lumion tab, and that's where we would go to File, and I'm going to save this to my desktop, and we'll just throw that in there. So now what we're going to do is we save it with all of our vegetation off, and this way when we import it into Lumion, we're going to use those objects. Cool. So let's go into Lumion here, and we'll start from scratch. This is the first screen that you would typically see in Lumion. So one of the major benefits of Lumion is that it's extremely easy to learn. And I say that because it's a rendering program. You're going to create stills, you're going to create animations and virtual tours. You're not really going to create geometry. So it's not saying that you don't have to be skilled in another 3D modeling program, but once you get to Lumion, this is extremely easy to set up. So what I do is I typically start with just a simple plain environment. And when compared to other rendering softwares, I was just floored when I first saw this, because the sky is blue, the sun is out and shining, the clouds are in the sky, and it's just really, really simple to drop the sun down and get a different effect. We can dial up more clouds, change the cloud types. So just controlling that entire lighting environment is completely handled, and that was one of the major hurdles of really any other rendering software. So then let's bring the sun back up, and we're going to import our SketchUp model. And keep in mind, this is a SketchUp model, the same process for Revit, Rhino, any 3D, really just about any 3D model type will move in this way.
And Mike, if you started, you had to get rid of 9 environments that you start.
Uh-huh.
But there are more environments that you can add to, or is it a variety of them?
Yeah, for sure. Any of these environments, if we go back here and start from scratch, like you can start with desert mountains, and any of these can be edited back to any of the other ones. It's just kind of a preset, and for me, I guess I am big on presets, but typically when I'm starting out in Lumion, I mean, unless I literally have a project in the desert, I would just start with a plain environment and then work from there to make it what I want. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of different environments you could start with. Mountains in spring, desert mountains. So yeah, the plain one I think is just kind of the clean slate. Cool. All right, so I'll click on Add New Model. I'll just go to my desktop temp folder where I just saved that SketchUp model, and I'm going to choose Open, and I'm just going to give that a different name because I've already imported that once today. So that's going to crunch that down, bring in our SketchUp model, and then I'll just click to place it. All right, so now we've got our SketchUp model in here, and I can use my change height tool and just kind of lift that up above grade. And you know, immediately we've got some level of success. It at least looks like a building being rendered pretty decent, like that. All right, so now I want to work on some texturing. So we'll just go to our Materials tool, and as I hover around, you can see that Lumion is recognizing these different materials that we've applied in SketchUp. So as long as you assign different materials, when you come into Lumion, you're going to have the option for editing each of those different surfaces. So here we've got glass, and we've got a preset for glass. So I click there, and now that's rendered as glass. And let's add this one. We'll render that as glass as well. So you know, immediately we've got some reflections in the windows. We can also add grass. So like here's our SketchUp grass. If I click here, and go to my landscape, and now we've got Lumion grass. So I'll just click on Save, and this is another one of the major leaps forward is I can turn on my 3D grass and just have that kind of pop up. So it's, you know, like in a lot of programs you would need to, you know, build that and actually have your rendering program think through every blade of grass in order to get that nice soft grass look. So Lumion's just kind of handled it. You just call it terrain or landscape and then turn on the grass, and that's that. All right, so you know, there's stay off the grass, yeah, that's it. So there's also you know, several different libraries, nature, indoor, outdoor. We don't have any water in this model, but the water is pretty spectacular. So yeah, you don't have any water anyway, so yes. Cool. So we'll go to our asphalt, and there we can, you know, choose like a Lumion texture, or it's also very easy to use your SketchUp textures. So like here I've got this brick, and you can see like I kind of modified the color of it. I forget if I did that in Photoshop or SketchUp, but I'll click here, and I'm going to make that a standard material. So I click there. So now that standard material, by default, it kind of has some gloss to it, and so that's why we're seeing that reflection happening. So I'll just come down here and just dial off the gloss and the reflectivity, and then I'm going to click on this button to create a normal map. So a normal map is like a black and white image that tells Lumion to kind of give subtle variances in the texture. So I click there, and then let's dial up that relief. And you can see you can flip it inside and out. So that kind of looks a little bit better. So you can see how, you know, a little bit and a lot. So that really brings that extra level of detail. Not totally necessary for every single project. I mean, one thing that I started to realize when I was working with Lumion is that not every project that we do needs to be this like super polished image. Most of the time it's, people call us on Monday, they want it Friday. And so, you know, that's really what we're able to do is turn these things around with Lumion and get a product that's like pretty spectacular for them to present just in a couple days, not weeks. Cool. So I'll say okay there. Let's see. So another really a kind of a pain point that Lumion has really conquered is on the lighting. So let's just drop the sun down to nighttime, and I'm going to add a texture. So you can see like when I built these can lights, I added a texture inside of that can light that I want to be illuminated. So I'll click there, make it a standard material, and then we're gonna add advanced to this and make it emissive. So that way, you know, all my lights are lit up, they're kind of glowing, you already get that lens flare effect. And so we'll say okay on that texture. And then I can go to my objects. And in the objects we have lights. So you have all these different preset lights, and really it's just all about like select an object, click to place it. So like I might grab this one here and then just click and just drop those lights in, and it's just kind of a real-time lighting. So oftentimes, you know, that's good enough to get where you want to be. But when you render it out, you also have the ability to really dial it up even further with global illumination and really dial in the settings. But again, it's just the right tool for the job. I mean, if you need to get this thing out the door tomorrow, that's going to happen tonight and not, you know, freak you out by rendering overnight. So let's look at some other objects here. All right, we got our sign lit up. Let's go to our environment. So another real strong suit of Lumion is the landscape library. So if I go to my objects and go to our nature, and so here you've got like some trees, and on each one of these large tabs you've got several subtabs. So there's just a lot of options for adding trees and plants. So let's grab some, I'll go to large trees. That one looks pretty good. And we'll just start clicking. So you can also hold control and that'll drop 10 trees at a time. And you can see it just does not slow down. So they're all kind of you know, blowing in the breeze, pre-animated. Everything's just like really taken care of. You don't have to tell it to do anything. It's just happening already. All right, so we'll drop some trees over here. Objects, maybe grab a different one. Like that. And then there's also some mask placement tools. These are some of the newer features for Lumion 5. So like the mask placement tool, this is really slick. If I were to go like, I want to drop some objects from here to here, but I don't want them to be those trees. I'll just click on the tree to delete it. I actually want to use flowers, so we'll grab this one, and this one. So just kind of grabbing a handful of these flowers, and then we'll dial up the number of items, and you know, maybe randomize the direction, and maybe just randomize the spacing a little bit, and then the offset. You know, you can kind of dial those things in. So really easy and quick to place objects and just kind of dial up your scene and add that, you know, punch of realism. Cool. Another one, another time I use that is when I'm placing cars. So like in the parking lot, I might just grab a sports car here, and we're going to do a mass placement. So you can imagine if you had a huge parking lot, you just kind of change the, we don't want to randomize, we want the direction. There we go. And the number of items until they just kind of fit in. And say, then you could add, you know, different cars in there, different, maybe something a little more reasonable. Family sedan, yeah, there we go. Cool. So you can see that, you know, to really populate your scene, it's very quick. We've, you know, Lumion's got all the tools you need to just make it come to life very quickly. All right, so you know that's dialed up, and just for the sake of rendering something here to show you the speed, you know, if we were to set up a camera view like that and go to our photo mode, this is where you can create all of your stills. So something that Lumion's doing is eliminating this idea that you need to send it out to Photoshop and post-process. We're going to do all of that in Lumion. Same thing with animation. We're eliminating the need to take it into iMovie or Premiere, chop it all up, and re-export, because that just kills you when you make a change. So with Lumion, you change your 3D model, refresh it, and all this stuff stays in place. So we're going to keep all of our post-processing in Lumion whenever possible. So I'm going to set up a photo here. We can adjust our focal length. I'll click on this camera down here, and that takes a snapshot. So like a lot of programs, you know, I can orbit around here and grab like another snapshot like this maybe. All right, so now, you know, you can always get back to these different views. So like that view alone, just the ability to render this thing at, let's do, we'll go high res on this, 3840 by 2160. I'm gonna save that as image number 1. And you can see it's gonna give 64 passes. It's gonna give us a print that's gonna go on a full size, like a 24 by 36, no problem. And that's done. It's done rendering. So that's like unheard of. You know, that's something that like really changed our ability to produce 30 images and animation all like turn around within a couple days. Cool. Now you do also have, yeah.
More than cool.
So more than cool.
More than
Brad's impressed. So nice, nice. Cool. So let's go to, let's just look at that. I'll go to my desktop temp folder and, you know, prove that that file does exist. And that is 1-to-1 right there. So, you know, the ability to just get stuff out and rendered and not have to have those moments of like, you know, you're leaving the office at 8 p.m., you hit render, and you just kind of hope. You hope that it's not going to crash. So this is really eliminated a lot of those sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if we're going to meet our deadline. All right, so then you know, that's kind of the quick demo on pulling that SketchUp model in. Let's look at if I were to open up this let me show you a change real quick, and then we're going to look at some effect stacks and how that works. So something that you know, I mentioned is this dynamic link between the 3D model and the Lumion presentation. So if I were to make a change to this, I can just kind of go in and say, well, I decide that, you know, this trim right here really should be something more pulled down, maybe pushed in by like a ½ inch, and just change that profile a little bit. Like that. Cool. And then, you know, maybe we, I don't know, what's another change? We'll just throw like a solid piece across this window here, like that. And then let's do the same thing here. Double click to repeat that last push pull. So just something to change that design a bit. And then I'm going to save that. Let me make sure I'm saving as, okay, so that goes to my temp folder. So I save that model, I head back into Lumion, and I just want to reload my model. So like right now you can see our profile is still is not updated, and then these windows down here are not updated either. So what I can do is I like to use my materials tool. Click here, and then I click on reload model. And when I do that, it just pulls that model right back in. So any changes that I made, you know, it's going to refresh and swap out those textures. So we're good to go there. So now those changes show up, and you know, all of your stills, everything that you're building in place, none of that stuff changes. You know, you're all good to just keep designing while one person is maybe setting up your Lumion stills and your animation. So just a very, very efficient, seamless workflow. Yes?
So is it possible to change like the stack or something? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
down or like that, or
Say again to...
well, for example, like right now it looks like my Windows background. Is there a way to change it?
Definitely. So that's when we go into a photo. So the question is regarding kind of the way that the clouds are reflecting, maybe not like totally realistic.
Well, even like the background, is there a way to make it like
Go to the
shift?
Oh, okay. Well, let's add one effect. So one effect that we can use is reflections. So this is where I first went with that, is we would add a reflection plane. Now, the way that reflections work in Lumion, because it's running really fast, they're kind of generic reflections that are based on this like global reflection ball that kind of sits at a default place in your model. But you're given the ability to dial up the quality of the reflections with reflection planes. So when I add those, now we're going to see, you know, really nice, clean reflections. Now, as far as the background goes, if you want to add like these world effects, you know, you can get in here, you can add weather. So you could add like a cloud effect, and then we can really control, the position of the clouds, the master cloud amount, the amount of clouds. We can go back into our effects, and we can add rain. We can remove rain. You can add effect for snow. So you have all these different effects. Everything is set up on these very simple sliders. So the snow density, let's see how cloudy you want it. Everything's just kind of really dialed in. It's taken down a notch. I mean, in some programs, you're really going to labor over all these little intricate settings. But what Lumia's done a really nice job of is just getting you to the end product almost immediately. And then you just kind of play with it. That's where you're going to lose time, is just kind of goofing around, setting up these different scenes and kind of playing with the settings. So I'll remove that snow. And does that answer the question? Was that not quite, huh? Yeah?
Like, for example, is there a way to tone down just even the brightness?
Oh, brightness. Our cloud brightness. So sky brightness, like that. Is that getting there? So, like a lot of this stuff, you can really tinker around with. You do have control, and I have some presets that I use, so I'm not always goofing around with this stuff all the time, but certainly, any of these sliders, just dial them around and come up with the settings. So cool. Different presets. Cool. Okay, so let's look then at these different presets again. So I'm going to go in here and we'll get back to our cooking show style. We'll import a scene, and I've got, let's see, our presentations. And we'll go to our model types, and we're going to go with that. Okay, so in here, I've already got a handful of images already set up. And so really this entire presentation, everything we're talking about, I've slowed it way down, recorded it, talked about the SketchUp process, talked about the Lumion process, and that's what is included with that blog post that we just released. So there's about 3 hours of tutorials. It'll take you through building this model, rendering it in Lumion. You can grab a pro trial over at lumion3d.com and give it a shot for yourself and really see. I do make it look maybe a little faster, but when you give it a shot, get your hands on it, you'll figure it out. So, okay, so let's look at our stills here. So like, adding all these different effects, that's ideal. If we were to set up a new effect, and what's going on here is I've got all of our people in here and all of our cars and all that. So I can set up a new camera and click on the camera here to snapshot that. And then this is a really slick feature that I talk about in the tutorials, is the ability to load a stack of effects. So when I click on load, I can go in here and choose, like, so now we have our Brightman designs, photo reel, interior animation, exterior stills, exterior animation. So for this one, I'll just use an exterior. And then that's going to drop in all of these different settings that we've already kind of like picked around with. And so now, we've got kind of our look for what we're going for. You can build your own presets. So that's kind of a nice feature as well for really expediting the workflow. Animation, that's something that was just rather difficult to do in general, is to create an animation and get it rendered in any reasonable amount of time. So the way that Lumion works is you create these different clips. So if I want to create a new clip, I click on record, and then I can say, like, all right, let's take a snapshot there, and then I'll just scoot over here and maybe come up a little bit, take a snapshot there, and we'll take a snapshot there. I'll click on play. So now this is going to be my camera path. So I just create my camera path by taking snapshots, and we're good there. I'll say okay. And now I can kind of click and drag that thing around in here and replace it, where I want it. So this is where you're building your timeline, you're building your animation like in real time in this rendering program, rather than having to just render out like chunks of animation and compile them in a linear video editor. So really just kind of eliminating that whole post-processing thing and then shaving down the amount of software that you really need.
So all those square pens all are different pieces of the
Exactly, yeah. So, if I hit play, now we're gonna see our entire timeline. So now, like, each one of these clips has different effects applied to it. It cuts to the next clip. And then, we can animate people. You can animate the sun setting, clouds moving, weather rolling in. There's a lot of, it's easy to get started. So there we got the clouds kind of blowing by. It's very easy to get started, but there's also a lot of room left to advance and really dig in on the other the tips and tricks and advanced techniques. Yeah, so previously, doing an animation at night was just something that it was just kind of we didn't do, and so that was not for me. So cool. So and then one other feature that's brand new is this My Lumion. So My Lumion is the ability to create these virtual tours where you go through, you drop these viewpoints in your project. You click on render and upload. It's going to render basically like a cubic panel out. And I explain that in some of I think in some of the tutorials we talk about that. But it just creates a virtual tour and packages it all up and then emails it to you. So you can just forward that email to a client. And now they have this kind of seamless ability to navigate, kind of a quasi 3D controlled environment. So that's like a really slick way to deliver. So, all your presentation material is being condensed into Lumion. All right, so is that everything I want to say? Let's see. My name is Mike Brightman with Brightman Designs, and we do offer all kinds of SketchUp classes here at Blue's Training. Brad's got all kinds of good stuff going on with Revit and Prezi and Rhino. Pretty much anything you need, there's a class here. We may take a really nice approach on that too. So I teach all the SketchUp classes, so definitely come in and see us. And Lumion is available at lumion3d.com. So if you check that out, there's our bluestraining.com, and then lumion3d.com. You can grab a trial, check out the tutorials, and just give it a shot. It's pretty impressive how quickly you'll be up and running and actually produce something that you can hand off to a client. That typically happens within like an hour or two. So yeah, thank you guys very much for coming out tonight. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to field those.
So on the trial, how long is the trial that you check out?
The trial, I want to say it's 1 week, but there's also a free version. It's still a free version? Cool, and I think that's watermarked, but that gives you the ability to kind of move around in there and understand the program, and then make a buying decision. So
Does it work with Mac?
Lumion does not run on Mac, but you can run it on Parallels. So it's only on Windows, and there are a ton of people running it on Parallels. But yeah, it's not for native Mac. Cool.
What about with other 3D programs like 3D like Rhino?
So Rhino, there's a new plugin for Rhino that kicks out to Lumion. So let's see, under products, I think that's where we scroll down. These are all your native image imports, or I'm sorry, native 3D file imports. And then with Revit, you've got the Revit to Lumion bridge. And so that's an add-on or an extra for Revit, and that'll kick out a Collada file, and then that comes into Lumion. For Rhino, same deal. It's just a plugin that's optimized that goes into Rhino and kicks out that file format that reads perfectly in Lumion. Cool.
So, Mike, thanks very much. That was great.
Yes, thank you.